in terms of coronavirus, we have less coronavirus per capita in terms of deaths than the national average. And we have the second oldest population in the United States. We have less cases per capita than the national average. And yet, we have all schools open. We have all businesses able to operate. Everyone has a right to work. Our unemployment's below the national average. Our tax revenue is much higher than expectations. And so I think what we've learned is two things. One, when you deal with a pandemic, it doesn't mean that every other issue in society simply goes away. You have to deal with folks' ability to earn a living, to educate their kids, and mental health and well-being. But what we've also learned is these lockdowns on their own just don't work. Even if you didn't care about economy, even if you didn't care about education, they don't work to stop the spread. And I think the results in Florida and elsewhere show that.
Florida, it seems like so many people are getting up and moving to Florida.
You can say that again, Maria. Our home sales year over year, 2020, up 24%. And a lot of people have been fleeing lockdowns. There's no doubt about it. I think we've done a couple things. One, we focus protection on elderly people rather than trying to shut the entire society down. We have to have schools open. So every parent in Florida has a right to send their kid to in-person instruction, private, charter, public, you name it. And we also say everybody has a right to work. So government, local government can't shut you down. They can't prevent you from earning a living. They can't prevent businesses from operating. And the result has been, for example, in the month of December, our revenue to the state of Florida, and we have very low tax rates, was up $330 million over the estimated revenue. People are coming. They want to do business here. They want to invest here. And I'll tell you, Maria, I run into people that say, you know, I was working remotely in whatever state, the lockdown state, and the schools were closed. So I said, the heck with this. I'm moving to Florida, the quality of life's better, and I can send my kid to in-person instruction. And so, you know, I think that we've understood COVID's real. You focus on your elderly population, but you can't run your society into the ground. Well, I think the sentiment that cure can't be worse than disease, I agree with that. But what I came to understand with the evidence was lockdowns don't cure anything. Even putting aside the economy, lockdowns don't work. They haven't worked to stop the spread. As you say, a place like California has been the most locked down. They've had higher cases, mortality, and hospitalizations per capita than us over the last 3 months. And so it doesn't work. And so we understood that. We also wanted to trust people to make decisions and take the proper precautions. But that is really the way to do it. And I think that the state, so Florida, we have one of the oldest populations in the country, second oldest population. And yet our mortality per capita for the whole pandemic is 26th in the country. 25 other states, many of them lockdown states, and many of them have younger populations, and yet they have higher per capita mortality. And so I think that those lockdowns were not evidence-based. Well, you look around the country, and they still are debating whether schools should be open. We've had schools open the whole year. They talk about whether businesses should be open. Every business in Florida has a right to operate. They talk about all these people unemployed. In Florida, every single person has a right to earn a living. And our unemployment rate is lower than the national average, even though we're so tourism dependent, and that market hasn't recovered at all. Our COVID, though, we have less COVID mortality per capita than the national average. 25 states are higher. So the lockdowns don't work on their own, but they cause catastrophic damage to society. So what we've been able to do is other states have tried to lock people down. We've tried to lift people up. And I'll tell you, every time I go out, someone will come up to me and say, my kid wasn't doing well, thank you for getting him back in school. Or my business would have failed, thank you for saving us. Or I would have lost my job.
Outside of a few places, the national media has largely used you as a point of criticism while celebrating governors like Andrew Cuomo. Why do you think that is in the face of all that evidence?
Well, look, they have a partisan agenda, and I think it was an election year. They did not want the president to carry Florida. I think the fact that the president endorsed me when I ran for governor, means that they want to do that. So they had a narrative. And their narrative is whatever that helps them advance their political. It doesn't matter about the facts. They don't care about the facts. In fact, they will ignore facts that are inconvenient for their narrative and even concoct conspiracy theories as to why the facts aren't doing it. So I think they've done a horrible job with what they've done. But here's the thing. people aren't buying it because people vote with their feet, and they are flooding into the state. We have investment coming in. We have people buying homes like never before. We have the fact that we have schools open. People are leaving in every corner of the state just because we have schools. We had sports. We've had sports going on the whole time. I have parents who have moved their kids to Florida because they didn't want to miss football season, which they would have in some of these lockdown states. And so I think that there's the narratives that some of the corporate elite media try to sell. People don't buy it, and this is a perfect example, because if people bought their narratives, you'd have people leaving here to go to these states that are supposedly doing so well. So here's the thing. We talked about lockdowns and all this, okay, and in Florida's success being open. Big tech censored criticisms of lockdowns early in the pandemic. And just imagine if we had had a robust debate on that, some of those states that are really dystopias now, maybe they would have chose differently. But if you put an article criticizing, they would take it down. It was blatant censorship, and I think it's contributed to a lot of lives being lost. And so this is a fundamental thing. So being able to structure the public square, and what we're doing is we're not intervening government to have less speech. We're trying to structure it to have more speech, and I think that's a fundamental difference.
Florida has been the #1 destination currently searched on the Travel Zoo website. What would a travel ban domestically mean for Florida?
Well, one, it would be unconstitutional. It would be a political attack against Florida. If you look, Maria, right now, you hear this debate over schools. Florida schools have been open the whole school year. We have every parent in Florida has the right to send their child to in-person instruction. Every worker has a right to work and earn a living and put food on their table, and every business has a right to operate. And consequently, our state is doing very well compared to these other states in terms of education and economy. But we also have 26 other states in the District of Columbia that have higher per capita COVID mortality than we do. We have 28 states that have higher per capita cases than we do for the bulk of the pandemic. And if you look right now, states that are always held up by people in Biden's administration, like New York, have way higher per capita patients hospitalized for COVID right now. So there's no basis in medical, there's no basis in economics, there's no basis in reality to do this except to punish a state that is doing it better than what his experts have recommended. Biden is a lockdowner, his advisors are lockdowners. Lockdowns don't work. We've demonstrated that. We're not turning back, Maria, and they will not be able to get away with targeting Florida. We now have an unemployment rate that is significantly less than the national average. We had a 25% increase in home sales year over year, 2019 to 2020. If you look at the top 25 places where new home construction is taking place at the highest levels, a plurality of those are in Florida. You have lockdown states that are putting people out of business. We focused on lifting people up, but by doing that, you actually have new entrepreneurs coming to start new ventures. New restaurants are opening in Florida. New hotels are opening in Florida. And so people view Florida as a place where they can follow their dreams. It is a free state. We are doing a lot to focus on protecting elderly people from COVID. Since the beginning of January, visits to the emergency departments for COVID-like illness in Florida is down over 60%. Cases are down. Hospital census is down 30 to 40%. And so you've seen a decline in COVID in Florida, and our winter high was much less than the summer high, but you've seen a decline all over the country. And so it'd be very odd to do a draconian travel restriction, which has no basis in the Constitution, at a time when all of these indicators are going down. Of course they're not being screened for COVID at the southern border because this is all political. So he's opening the border, he's letting illegals pour in. They're not doing any COVID tests. They're just coming into the communities. We have no idea what type of COVID or other things that may be carrying, but yet he wants to potentially make you take a test if you just get on an airplane and fly from one American city to the next, or he wants to prevent travel to the state of Florida. This stinks to high heaven. It is a huge contradiction, and you can't square wanting opening borders for illegal aliens, but then also restricting U.S. citizens from basically traveling around the country as they see fit. And I think the American people see the hypocrisy in that. And so any attempt to restrict or lock down Florida by the federal government would be an attack on our state. done purely for political purposes. There was some type of report about potential travel restrictions on Americans and on Floridians, and I think it's an absurd report that they would be doing that. I think it would be unconstitutional, it would be unwise, and it would be unjust. And if you think about it, restricting the right of Americans to travel freely throughout our country while allowing illegal aliens to pour across the southern border unmolested would be a ridiculous but very damaging farce. So we will oppose it 100%. It would not be based in science. It would purely be a political attack against the people of Florida. Just look at the COVID situation in the state of Florida. So since December, the last couple months, Florida's cases per capita compared to the rest of the country, 28. 27 other states higher per capita cases. And for the entire pandemic, it's a similar story. Hospitalizations per capita over this time period, Florida ranks 30th. 29 other states have higher per capita hospitalizations. Fatalities per capita for this same period, Florida ranks 42nd. 41 states have higher per capita fatality. So since December 1st, well over half the country has seen much worse COVID results than here in Florida. And so any attempt to restrict or lock down Florida by the federal government would be an attack on our state, done purely for political purposes. Now, we've had to stand by Floridians over these many, many months, even in difficult circumstances, even when it was not easy to do. We've saved their jobs time and time again. We've preserved small businesses time and time again, and we preserve the right of parents to send their children to school in person. You look around the country, a lot of kids haven't been in school since March of 2020. It's an absolute disgrace.